Hey, what's going on guys, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 mod review. Today we're checking out yet another release from the Commonwealth Weaponry expansion, and that's going to be the 10mm Revolver. And no, not the Colt 6520, we're talking about a new design based on the real-life Ruger Super Red Hawk. The idea for a revolver like this was having something for the early mid-game that can function as a nice revolver before you get your hands on a 44. But even has some different stats that make it worth having even into the mid-game, that make it worth having over a 44 in some specific scenarios. The idea behind this weapon is it has some very nice long barrel options and some different long scope options as well that the regular 44 just doesn't have access to. You do have your regular scopes, but you also get some really long ones, whereas the 44 only gets a short scope. The idea behind that is that we can actually use this thing as a pocket sniper. Now, for some people that may seem a bit ridiculous. Why would you ever want to use this revolver over a regular sniper rifle? Well, if you're actually doing a proper build in Fallout and you're using only pistol perks, it's nice to have a weapon that can actually handle targets at a decent range, as most of the vanilla pistols really aren't up to the task. So yeah, while this weapon does have a lower base damage than the 44, all of its other stats are much higher. It is faster, has more range, and is able to perform better in specific situations, whereas the 44 just does have better damage, so it's really up to you and what you prefer, but depending on your niche, this may be a perfect pistol for you. Now, in terms of its in-game features, this weapon is going to use vanilla animations. I had considered opting for custom ones, but instead of that, you will be able to download whatever 44 animation replacers you enjoy, and they will work automatically with this weapon. As usual, all of the models and textures are completely custom for this weapon, and there's even a unique you can find with its own fancy schmancy paint job. No, there aren't a ton of uniques in this mod, but for the one we did include, it's very cool and has some interesting features that I will explain in further details later. Let's just say you're going to be able to get a lot of mileage out of the one unique included. Now, this weapon also has a good bit of attachments over at the weapons workbench. It's not a ton of attachments like some of my other mods, but it does have definitely more than the vanilla revolver at the very least. If you'd like to get your hands on the basic version of this weapon, not the unique, it is added to the leveled list as usual, and it can be found on Raiders, Gunners, and even the Brotherhood of Steel after level 7. In terms of the design of this weapon, I was hoping that it would have its own unique silhouette, and I think that it does, offering a very interesting frame and a bunch of cool attachments to back it up, offering a mix of aesthetics from both a classic revolver and some Falloutified parts to make this thing fit nicely in the sandbox amongst the vanilla weapons. Now then, let's go ahead and start checking out some of the finer details of this mod, starting off with its stats. So for starters here, we have the basic version of the 10mm revolver, with a base damage of about 37. It uses 10mm rounds, has a fire rate of 7 since it is a single action revolver, a range of 134, an accuracy of 69, a weight of 4.7 pounds, and a value of 86 caps. And I have to say, I'm pretty happy with this thing. The two-tone grip with the rubber and the wood panels, much like the real-life Ruger, is super cool. And this thing is going to be branded with Red Raptor, which is essentially the Fallout equivalent of Ruger. Pretty cool stuff. Nice looking little revolver here. I think the stainless steel looks pretty good. Very different from some of the mods I've been making recently. Now, as mentioned, there is one unique in this mod, and that is going to be the Gambler, offering a nice custom black and red paint job with a custom grip attachment as well that has two different panels that are different on each side. This thing is pretty swaggy. I gotta say, I like the paint on this quite a bit. It looks goofy here in the preview menu because there's no lighting, but in-game, this thing looks really cool. Now, you may notice some interesting things here in the stats menu. The description here says, does a random effect on hit, and you'll see a little bit of energy damage. Well, that's because every single time that you shoot this weapon, it will throw a dice roll, and depending on what you get, you're going to get a different effect on the enemy that you hit. Now, this is a behind-the-scenes dice roll. You don't actually roll any dice, but you will get different effects depending on what you roll. So it goes 1 through 100, and each of those numbers corresponds to a different effect, which is pretty cool. Sometimes that does mean nothing, so you will get no effect whatsoever, but other times it means some pretty common effects like incendiary damage or cryo damage, electrical, etc. And there's even some really rare things that can happen once in a while, like sending an enemy flying or even turning them into goo. Now, this is a completely luck-based weapon, sadly not affected by the actual luck stat in-game, but rather your real-life luck. What are you gonna get when you shoot this thing? It's essentially the Wabbajack of Fallout 4. An effect like this would be pretty OP on something with a high fire rate, but because this thing is a single-action revolver, I think it works pretty well, and the chances are you aren't going to get anything too crazy, but occasionally, you just might. So keep on shooting things, and eventually you will take them down with all of the fun effects on this weapon. And to showcase that here, I have a few Deathclaws. This is less of a damage test, and more just showing off the effects. So we'll go ahead and start with one of these Deathclaws and see what happens. As you can see, bam, first shot, we actually got an incendiary effect. Pretty lucky. Next one didn't seem to do anything. And that one seemed to affect him with both cryo and knockback, sending him flying. Pretty funny. Sometimes you can get multiple effects, seemingly. And he seems to have died. Sometimes that can happen, so that actually gets to show off one of the interesting features of this weapon. Whenever you do hit them with cryo or incendiary damage or anything that does damage over time, it technically counts as a dice roll for each second of damage, so you can sometimes get some funny effects like Deathclaws instantly dying, but it doesn't happen every single time. Usually, it's pretty consistent and pretty balanced. But occasionally, things will just die. But yeah, there's a handful of effects here. It is hard to get every single one to trigger because there are many, and it is a dice roll every single time. But there's a pretty good amount of things that you can run into. The best thing you can do is play with this thing and see all of the different crazy effects that can happen to enemies when you fire at them with this weapon. As you can see, this Deathclaw here decided to turn into goop. The other ones burned and flew and whatnot. So this thing has a lot that it can offer, and I'm not going to show off every effect because it's kind of hard to make them all happen because it is completely random. Hence why this thing is known as the Gambler. One last thing, if you want to get your hands on this weapon, actually, you have to head over to Revere Beach Station, where you can find this thing on the 3rd floor of the building in that area, next to a bathtub. Now then, we're going to check out some of the different attachments over at the weapons workbench. Starting off with receivers, we have standard up through advanced, giving you a damage of 64 in 10mm. Not too shabby for a nice little revolver. Then for barrels, we have some fun options. We have a snub barrel, a standard barrel, and a long barrel, offering some nice range and increased recoil control for when you are trying to use those long scopes to snipe at things far away. And this thing is pretty dang accurate at range. I've been testing it a lot, and it does actually drop people at a pretty good distance. But also you have a bull barrel and a long bull barrel, which will increase those stats even higher and give you some better hipfire accuracy to boot. I also gotta say, I just love the aesthetic of the bull barrel on here. It has some really fun geometry and lines, and to me it looks like something straight out of TF2. Fun looking little gun here. I like it quite a lot. Now for the grips, the basic version of this weapon is going to come with a pretty standard little wood grip here, but a really cool option is the comfort grip, again, with that two-tone paneling of wood and rubber. But we also have a sharpshooter's grip for a more comfortable grip with scopes, and does have some nice little finger grooves there. And there's a 4th grip, but it is only available on that unique, the Gambler grip. Then for sights, we have standard iron sights, no glow sights for this one, sadly. We do have a custom modeled short scope and medium scope, both in chrome to match this weapon. We have a night vision scope option as well, which looks just goofy on this thing, but I think it's pretty dang cool. The recon scope featured on the FAL, and then also a laser sight, which is custom modeled for this weapon as well, and I have to say looks super cool. This thing combined with, say, a bull barrel is a pretty fun aesthetic and looks very Fallout-y to me. On top of that, though, we even have muzzles options in the form of a compensator and a muzzle brake that actually are matching in texture as well. Sadly, none of these have been retextured to match the black version of the Gambler, but you probably don't need those attachments anyway, since you're going to be focusing more on the effect than the actual stats of the weapon. So yeah, guys, that is going to be the 10mm revolver, as it is known in-game, or in real life, the 10mm Ruger Super Hawk. Yes, this revolver actually does come in 10mm in real life, which I thought made it a super cool fit for Fallout 4. So, as usual, if you would like to try this mod out for yourself, it will be linked down in the description below. You can find this thing over on Nexus right now, and I'm not sure if there's a port to Xbox yet, but if there isn't, I'm sure it'll be up very soon. But it might even be there already, so go ahead and check it out over on BethesdaNet. And as always, if you enjoy the mod, consider giving it an endorsement, and if you enjoyed the video, drop it a like. Each of those is going to help out the piece of content get traction in its available area, whether it's on YouTube or on the Nexus. So if you support my content, consider dropping both of those a like and endorsement. Furthermore, if you'd like to support my work directly, you can do so using the link down in the description to support me on Patreon, but of course it is completely optional. Just for donations if you're into that kind of thing, but it is not at all necessary. Thanks again for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy the mod, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!